Welcome to our Safe and Sound show. I'm Kirk Webb, your host, and this month we have Rhonda Krouse from Taylor Snowflake Fire and April Whiting, who is a media specialist and educator on the fun stuff with social media. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
So, and a little bit of, I know Rhonda, you actually do wear a lot of hats there at Taylor Snowflake Fire. You not only are the administrative assistant, but you also run ambulance, you are a firefighter, and pretty much keep everybody in line, or at least attempt to, right?
Try to, yes.
Yeah, and April, media specialist, and in fact, you're a certified educator through Harvard, I believe it is. Is it?
Well, it's a company called Common Sense Media, and they are Harvard research based. So it's really solid information coming out of there.
And it's good because these days, social media is just, it's just exploded.
It has exploded, absolutely.
And, I mean, years ago, I know growing up, in order to get all this information, we had to go look in the encyclopedias when I grew up, right? To the library and to get the new and stuff. And now it's basically at our fingertips.
Absolutely.
And so it's like, oh my goodness, it's like, and now our kids. Yeah. And the access that they have and the things they have access to, and that's kind of what we want to talk about is kind of the pitfalls of social media. And I know last month we were talking with Sergeant Sally O'Hare, from detective with the Navajo County Sheriff's Office, and we delved into a fair amount of things, but we wanted to continue this conversation. We're all parents. Right. We've all have kids or grandkids now that have access to this and have phones. What are some of the things that you're seeing that when you're going and doing an educational speech at the high school level, what are some of the things that you're seeing that are scaring you?
Right. So much. There's so many places to take it. Just social media in general, it's opening up the World Wide Web to your children and millions of strangers that are they're accessible to your child in your home. And there's a lot of scary things that can happen. Social media can be a great thing. It can be a great way to connect with people, but it can also, there's also downfalls to that. Sexual predators, that is 98% of the cases that we're having now come out of social media. They groom kids online. They're super good at what they do. They're really tricky. And when you have 10 and 12-year-olds that have been given access to social media, and they're really susceptible to these strangers that do not have good intentions. So there's things like that. There's things like your digital footprint, and sometimes it's hard for kids to understand that things that you post on the internet, they're there for forever. Right. And they're getting way too comfortable feeling like they're safe to post things and then erase them, or to Snapchat things and they think they're being erased. And later on in life, it's following them for forever, and they're losing college scholarships and jobs. And so there's so many aspects. So
you mean when we take a picture and we send it out and I looked horrible in that picture, especially like a day like today, the wind is just horrid.
Yes.
Right? And I erase it, it's not gone.
No.
I mean, that's
still there.
Yeah, and I think that's that kind of the naivety of a person, especially young kids.
Absolutely.
You know, they haven't had that full age wisdom, because as we get older, hopefully we get wiser, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I tell parents to give incremental trust. Your 10-year-old does not need a smartphone.
Right.
It's like handing over the keys to a sports car. And with no training, and then saying good luck, don't crash, and then they crash, and you're like, well, what happened? Yeah, it's too much for our young kids to handle all at once. Sometimes it's too much for adults to handle.
Right. You know, we talk about being mature, but there's a lot of adults that are haven't not quite got to that maturity level, right?
Yeah.
And, growing up, I know we would teach kids and teach our kids stranger danger.
Yep.
Yes.
And you know, somebody coming along the street, and I know we still have a problem with that. I mean, just recently, you know, somebody in a non-windowed panel van, offering candy to kids to step into their van, and kids are getting abducted. I mean, that was big back then, but it's still happening.
Yes.
But now we've kind of evolved and changed to, and we use a program called Charlie Check First, because now we're having issues of split families and maybe part of the family that doesn't have custody, wanting their kids to go with them, and now we need to say check that, make sure that who you're supposed to go with type of deal. So because most abductions were being done by family members and things like that.
Right.
Well, now we've kind of evolved into something completely different.
Yeah.
And like you say that, I know. I see kids, even my own son plays these online games.
Yes.
And they're playing games with people from who knows where.
Who knows? Yes.
Yeah.
And they can put any kind of face to that.
Oh yeah.
That voice, and it doesn't have to be actually them. And so like you're saying, they're grooming these kids. What is grooming?
Absolutely. I just had a mom contact me a couple months ago that her 6-year-old son was playing a game called Roblox, and she didn't even know that it was connected to the internet. Well, unbeknownst to her, there was a grown man grooming her 6-year-old young son. They had no idea. And they're so good at what they do. And it's really scary. Parents don't realize that things like Roblox, that they can easily get online. A 6-year-old, who would have thought, you know?
It's just a game.
Yeah, absolutely. But anywhere where kids are, there's going to be bad people with bad intentions. So online gaming, social media, a lot of our sex trafficking, most of our sex trafficking is coming out of social media and online gaming. So it's super important that as parents, we are educating ourselves on the dangers, and that we're not just handing over smartphones and saying, well, here you go. That we're having conversations about how do you stay safe online? Role play, you know, what if someone contacts you and asks you for personal information? Are you handing that over to them? Things that we're just not having as many conversations with our kids as we need to be.
And I think that's where we kind of fall down as parents, grandparents, and are we having those difficult conversations?
Right.
Because, you know, it's granted, social media, electronic devices, the internet has become a babysitter.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Most certainly.
And
any restaurant you can see all the kids.
Well, and not only
and
kids,
parents.
but you know, and okay, I've been guilty. More so, it's kind of more of a funny thing, but I'll text somebody that's sitting right across from me.
What are you ordering?
Yeah.
Look up.
And more of a joke, but I think in reality, how much is that? Are we losing that connection?
Yes,
absolutely, we are.
You know, because growing up years ago, you had to talk to each other. Otherwise, it was just complete silence, and that gets uncomfortable too. And that's a good technique to use sometimes, you know. But
right, yeah, it's true. I call it being alone together.
Yeah.
Right? Because if we let it, technology can be extremely isolating.
Yeah.
For sure.
And we lose that interaction, that human interaction, and I think that's where a lot of our problems in society stem from, that kind of.
Right.
So now, when some of the other things that come out from social media, and I know you've talked a little bit about the pictures. That's kind of huge, especially at junior high and high school age.
Right. Unfortunately, it's becoming a big problem in junior highs and high schools of kids sending each other nude photos. Sometimes it's really hard and uncomfortable for parents to talk about. A lot of times they're so surprised. But I go into schools all over the U.S. and it's a huge problem. We get so comfortable. They say that the average child has 2,000 pictures taken of themselves by the age of 2. And so then, you know, we're just growing up with a camera in our face, and we're just used to taking pictures. And then as these kids get older, then they get into the selfie era, and they just get really comfortable with taking pictures of themselves or having pictures taken of themselves. And then pretty soon, you know, they hit junior high and high school, and they're being talked into these it's really sad situations. You know, they make one bad choice, and that picture can follow them around for the rest of their life, for sure.
And I know Rhonda and I, we just attended a conference, an educational conference, and one of the speakers talked about all the different apps.
Social media apps.
And the social media, and you know, and I even tried looking into a couple of these, and I can see how it would be super easy to start sending some really awful pictures, and not even of yourself, but of other people. So you get into bullying, and all of that, and degrading somebody, and what are some of those apps that you would warn parents against?
There's so many. It's really hard to stay on top of them.
Right.
There's a new dangerous app released every single day.
Wow.
But there's an app, it's a calculator app. It looks like a calculator, it functions like a calculator. But if you enter a certain code, a math problem, it takes you to the dark web where kids are exchanging, you know, nude pictures or dealing drugs, all kinds of things. But as a parent, you look at it and it looks like a calculator. And then there's really popular apps, like I was at the high school this morning talking to kids. There's an app called TikTok. It's extremely popular right now, but it's also extremely dangerous, and it's very sexualized. There's not a good way to filter any of the content. So that's a scary one. Snapchat is sexual predators' very favorite app. There's something called a snap map. And if that is on, anyone can find your location within a matter of feet. It's really scary. And so, you know, there's things we can educate ourselves as much as possible. But I also tell parents, because there's just so many apps, I always say, you are your child's best app. You have to sit in the trenches with them and have these hard conversations. You have to be talking about, you know, the pitfalls of social media and technology, and it's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. And so we have to be guiding our children through these things and helping them stay safe.
So Rhonda, you've got a couple of kids.
I do.
And they grew up with cell phones, right?
Yes.
What were some of the things that and this has been a few years now, right? Because you're an empty nester, I understand.
I am. Woo.
You made it. You did it.
We all survived.
But growing up, how did you maintain control over what they accessed?
So for me, we started off with flip phones just because we didn't have smartphones back then. And I started my kids at 9 because I worked in the school district, and so they were leaving me. I come from a background of law enforcement, so I knew it's just a matter of when, not if, somebody gets kidnapped, and I didn't want my kid to be that child. And so I felt comfortable, well, if they have a cell phone, then I know where they are, I can get a hold of them, blah, blah, blah. And in reality, when they got older, it was turning into the Snapchat and all of that kind of stuff. And so for me as a parent, I just pretty much told them that your phone is not to be locked. I can have access to it anytime, and I can view anytime. So whatever you're saying on that Instagram or messaging, just realize that I'm going to look at that every night before we go to bed. And so that was kind of like, whoa. So
Mom's gonna check out my stuff.
Exactly.
Good for you.
Because that was them. You know, everybody wants to be private. They all want to be like, this is my stuff. And for me, I had a drawer at home. We didn't have cell phones and stuff like that. So I'd put the love letters and stuff like that in my drawer at home.
Right.
You know? So that's mine. Well, the kids, it was their phones, but I just don't think parents understand that phone gives them access to the world. And they think that there's internet cops out there that's going to protect your child, when in reality there is none. And you have to be the cop to do that.
Right. And I know the flip phones that first came out, probably didn't have access to the web, but now, because you can still get a flip phone, they're still out there, and that's and like you said, the watch is a really great starter for young kids.
It is, yeah.
But I thought flip phones were a good starter too, but yet you're now saying
kids are finding ways to hook up flip phones to the internet. They're so smart.
So you got to be cautious. And so as a parent, grandparent, because we're seeing grandparents that are now the primary caretaker.
Absolutely.
And how many of these grandparents really don't have, they're not technology wise, and
it's true.
And so what are some of the things that you kind of advise parents to how to maintain some control at home? And
so it's really a lot of small things that can make a big difference. I tell parents, don't do nothing just because you can't do everything, or that you can't do everything, perfectly. So just like what you were talking about, I tell parents to have a central charging station in your home in the master bedroom, and every night all devices have a bedtime, and at whatever time you choose, all those devices go on the charging station in mom and dad's bedroom for the night, and then you should have every username and password, and you should not be afraid to use it. And so at night, when it's on the central charging station, this is when you can be doing those safety checks to make sure that your kids are making good choices online and that they're being safe. I always tell parents, you're gonna see things that you don't like text messages. There's gonna be like, my dad's a jerk, and stuff like that. You have to decide what battles you're gonna fight.
Pick your battle.
Are they participating in bullying? Are they giving away private information? Are they sexting? Look at their web browser search history. Are you comfortable with things they're searching? Are you familiar with all the apps on their phone? And are you okay with these apps? So that's a big one. I tell parents, if you go home tonight and you only do one thing, let it be the central charging station. It's just one thing that can make a huge difference, because when these kids are taking their devices into their bedrooms all night long, that's when, number one, they're not getting adequate sleep. You better believe if they hear a ping from across the room at 2 a.m., they're not going to let it go.
You're going to get up and go check it, right?
And then 2 hours later, they're on the 10th funny cat video, and they've lost all kinds of sleep. And then also, that's when kids tend to make really poor choices, is in the middle of the night with texting or what they're searching, things like that. And
that's when those predators are probably pretty active.
Absolutely.
Because they know that that's their the vulnerable time.
So that's a really big one. And then there's simple things like having device-free dinners. Don't underestimate the power of family dinners. Studies have shown that it creates better behavior in your children. They're less likely to have substance abuse problems. But then if you're adding in devices to family dinners, and you think about, are you checking your email while your kid is trying to tell you about their day? Or if your child has a device in their hand, are those family dinners as meaningful? They're not. So get a basket, and every device goes in the basket in a different room for dinner. So there's just little
things. So you not text each other across the table?
Just pass
actually
the
have
salt,
to say it.
You have to look up. So just little things, and teach your kids that when someone's talking to you, your phone goes down and your eyes go up. We've really lost that as a society. They call it secondhand screen time, and it really affects our kids when we're not giving them our full attention or our whole face, really. So.
Now, on a more sensitive thing that comes out because of social media, are suicide rates. I know Apache, Navajo counties lead the state of Arizona, or if they're not leading, they're up there in the top of, how many suicide attempts or successes do you respond to as an EMS worker?
I would say in our small town of 10,000 plus, because we fluctuate between Snowflake and Taylor, we run at least 5 a month. And we just had one actually pass away, successful. Yes.
And it's, you know, and how much of this is being influenced by social media and
Right.
and you know.
And so for me, I see some of these kids in the back of the ambulance, and I have 35 minutes to talk to them, because that's typically my, you know, how long
Your
it takes me to get to the
transport time.
hospital. And so a lot of them are female, and so I'll talk to them, I'll hold their hand. I had one female in particular that she was a cutter, and she had them all the way up everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just held her hand, and I just was there. And I think a big part of her is she just wanted somebody to listen. And I think parents today, they don't know how to listen. They're old school. Well, why are you doing that? Doesn't that hurt? You know, but she's doing it for a reason, because she doesn't know how to express herself. We've gone to the society of it's bad to express ourselves, and you can't tell somebody, hey, you're making me mad.
Right.
That's not acceptable. So you have to internalize it, and so we do internalize it, and that was her way of internalizing her pain. And she just didn't connect with her parents, and so that was her way of feeling better. And so I talked to her about it. I'm like, how did you learn about this? Well, I mean, was it social media? Was it a book? Was it a movie? And she really couldn't pinpoint how she found out about this. So it was kind of interesting, you know. So
Right, and I do a little educational program in the schools on bullying, and part of it does talk about the social media aspect, and kids, you know. In fact, one of the school resource officers, he shared a story in one of the sessions that we were with the kids about, he has a friend over in Texas that his 10-year-old daughter, because all of the people sending her texts and making her feel less than, and how often do we even interpret texts incorrectly?
Right.
And you know, because the human interaction, the connotations, the facial expressions, all that's missing.
Yep.
So you can take something that's said so many different ways, but because of that, she felt so horrible, so picked on, so less than, that she decided to kill herself, and she did. And it all stemmed from at 10 years old. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is scary.
Right. It is.
You know, and I think growing up, I know, you know, I didn't like myself growing up, and I had those thoughts of, and it had nothing to do, because social media wasn't even exist back then.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of dating myself. But I think as a society, and this is just my opinion, I think we tend to not talk about it because it is such a sensitive subject.
Right.
And so we think that if we don't talk about it, it's going to go away and everything's going to be just fine.
Right.
After having dealt with my own thoughts, and it took me a long time before I felt comfortable, especially even doing something like I'm doing right now, being a host of a show, getting up in front of hundreds of kids and talking about different things. But and dealing with, you know, suicide attempts in my own job and family, and seeing some successful ones, and I've learned that you've got to talk about it.
Oh,
you have to get past that total fear and scare of, I'm going to, if I talk about it, well, that's going to give them an idea to do it. I think that's the wrong way to think.
Or I'm weak if you talk about it. Like, I'm feeling this way today. Well, you're weak. You're mentally ill. So now you can't do A, B, and C.
Right.
Yes.
So I think we need to be very more open about these kinds of subjects, and parents and kids, or whoever, caretakers, they need to have those hard discussions and talk about it, and because if we don't discuss it, it's going to keep happening.
Right. You know, statistic-wise, we had a really stable period of suicide rates in teens from 2000 to 2007. It was really stable. And then in 2007, it shot up. It tripled. And so it went up 76% suicide rates from the ages of 10 to 14.
Wow.
76% in the year 2007. And what else happened in the year 2007? The first smartphone hit the market. And so, is that the only reason? Absolutely not. But is there a correlation here? There is. And then in 2009 is when social media hit the market and just exploded. And so there is a correlation. We can't blame that statistic wholly on social media and smartphones. But I'm working upstream from that, showing how, you guys are on the front lines and I'm upstream trying to show parents what this correlation is. And, you can, when you were talking about that girl that was a cutter, there's Instagram followers that you can follow that are so popular that are cutters, and that are teaching these teens to cut
and where to cut.
They make it seem cool.
Where to cut. And, and so they're teaching each other things like cutting and suicide ideation and so many things. And just like you said, we've just got to start talking about it. Saying the word suicide doesn't make someone go and try to commit suicide.
Right, and I know even within the fire service, we're seeing a lot of firefighters killing themselves. Law enforcement, same thing. And it's huge. And so because of it, we've actually created peer support groups, and I've become a part of that peer support team. So somebody to be able to reach out and to have that discussion with, and to talk to, and somebody that you can share those feelings with. And there's so much more that we could keep talking on this subject
all day long.
But hopefully this has been able to give parents an idea of where to start. In fact, I know, April, you're more than willing and to be able to go and provide an educational experience with parents, church groups, schools,
I
whatever.
go everywhere.
In fact, I understand you will be having a TEDx talk coming out
I will.
Shortly. And talking on these specific topics, and I think that's huge. And I know Rhonda and I both see in the trenches and working with our communities and all that outreach. So I appreciate the information that we've shared here today. Hopefully, give parents an idea of where to start and come in. So thank you for being on the show with me.
Thank you.
And it's Rhonda Krouse from Taylor Snowflake Fire, April Whiting, media specialist.
That's right.
And an educator. And I think that's the big thing. And a mom and we're all parents that are passionate about this.
For sure.
So thank you for joining us on Safe and Sound, and join us again next month for another edition.